What did your school waste money on that nobody liked? Story 1. They made a huge screen with 4 huge plasma screens and put it in a very random place in a very random building hall. No signal school spendings in a nutshell. 1. Pay high price and amp, shiny technology. 2. Abundantly congratulate yourself about being a modern and advanced school. 3. Don't use it because complicated and staff is not trained. 4. Nothing changes, teachers still use old or own equipment. 5. Repeat the next year. Story 2. Name tags. Shortly after Columbine and all those other shootings peaked in frequency. It was supposed to keep outsiders from getting in the school unnoticed and shooting everyone. But at the time, people doing the shootings were always students, so we joked they were bulletproof. Story 3. Some of my classmates won a bunch of money for our school. Our school was one of the lowest funded schools in the district. The district took the money and spent it on another school. Hey, reminds me when I was a sophomore, my school was next in line to get renovations and upgrades. Only half classes even had air conditioning. Instead, the district built a new school that took half of my graduating class. They also took teachers, so my classes were still overcrowded. Yeah, our school has about 2,000 people while it was built for like 1,200. None of our classes have air conditioning, to my knowledge. None of my classes do at least. And our school spent $15,000 on the new esports team when our arts program, show choir, marching band, theater, etc., has been begging for funding for 15 years. Story 4. The large schoolyard at my school had a set of planters in the center. They were basically 4 triangles made of brick that pointed in at each other and created an X-shaped walkways between. The outside sides had a bench each attached. People would sit and chat to each other on the benches, teachers and students alike. There was very little litter or vandalism. The plants were kinda pretty insofar as any secondary schooler would care to notice. One year, a duck made her nest in one of the planters, and apart from a few, "Oh hey, a duck nest" comments, it was left alone. Then, for some reason, the school decided to rip the planters out. Took them 2/3 of the school year to do it, and blocked off the X walkways so everyone had to crush by on the outside lanes between classes. Everyone was super curious as to what the planters would be replaced by. Turns out, nothing. They simply bricked over the holes left by the planters and left it as a huge empty space. We didn't even get new benches, so no one had anywhere to sit during break. People started to miss the plants since the lack of color left the whole area kinda bland. We also kept to the old X walkway since stepping over the former planters felt weird. Story 5. iPads for the kindergarten. They were intended to have educational apps on them that kids could play on at indoor recess. Believe it or not, most kindergartners would rather play on the swings or play with dolls than learn to write their name on an app. No one used them, no one liked them, and they all broke within 2 months. My indoor recess at that age was the whole group using these big puzzle piece foam blocks to build castles and then crawl all over them. We would not have cared about the iPad either. Story 6 was on boys' varsity soccer team in high school. New head coach wanted to emphasize more analytical approach, and as such, had Booster Club buy a $10,000 goalpost camera. None of the team liked the idea anyway, especially since the girls' soccer team used their money for new jerseys and nicer balls, and they still made it farther in their playoffs than we did almost every year. As it turns out, the coach couldn't figure out how to put the camera together, and we never used it. Biggest waste of $10,000 I've ever seen. $10,000 goalpost camera? How much of that was a kickback to your coach? Because for 1/10 of that, I can buy a GoPro and have a custom-made cage to protect it. Story 7. My son's current school sent out an email to parents announcing that they'd like to add voice projection to every class. He's in 1st grade, and there are 20 kids in his class, totally unnecessary. They had a demo session, and it sounded horrible. My high school got these midway through my junior year, and they sucked. The range wasn't great, and the receiver in one classroom would pick up the microphone in another, and the battery life was awful, so the teachers rarely used it. The best thing that they were used for was the one time that my teacher noticed a kid in the room across the hall was asleep in class. They were watching a video, and the other teacher had stepped out of the room for a moment, and walked over to the door so that the other room's receiver would pick up his mic and said, "Wake up," and then closed his door. Story 8. When I was still a student, my school spent almost $200,000 to paint the roads outside our school. You read that right. almost $200,000 of our precious tuition dollars to paint the roads outside blue and yellow. To pour salt on this painful wound, the paint job didn't even make it through winter. So, just to reiterate, $200,000 for 3 months of painted road. I think I'm still angry about it. That's gotta be the dumbest one I've read in here. A lot of them are dumb in that money was spent on technology or other things that wouldn't be used, but those at least keep some value after being bought. This is just throwing money away. Story 9. My high school wasted a ton of money buying 2 golf carts. Their reasoning was it allowed staff to get to any dangerous scenes faster. Except we never had any accidents, and they were mostly used for joyrides by the hole monitors. This seems like a shitty idea regardless. Driving golf carts indoors in a school sounds dangerous. Story 10. Our mascot was a rocket, and a certain percentage of school construction money had to be spent on art. They spent $90K commissioning a giant rocket sculpture for the main field entrance. When it was unveiled, the artist had made one tiny change to the design. Instead of a pointy rocket tip, he'd gone with a rounded, mushroom tip. I mean, we thought it was hilarious, especially when they cut off the tip as their solution to the problem, but nobody liked it. Story 11. Son's elementary school PTO had an excess of funds. They decided to spend it on a buddy bench. A buddy bench is a bench that you can sit on if you want buddy. IDOWorkHereLady, it sounds like a decent idea, except that it was placed in the hallway near the office, and none of the kids wanted to be identified as someone who didn't have a friend. Nobody ever sits on it. I thought the idea is that you put the buddy bench near the playground so kids would just naturally invite other kids to play. Why in the world would you put it in the ostracization zone near the office? Story 12. This isn't common knowledge, so I was really the only one incensed by it. But I worked for Cisco Foods as a baker at university, and the upper echelons of the administration had hired their own personal pastry chef to make these extravagant desserts for their meetings. The pastry chef was legit. She made absolutely amazing desserts of a wide variety every day, loaded them onto a cart, and with her baker's outfit and hat on, would wheel it up to their daily administration meetings. Her salary was paid for by the students of the school, so that the administrators could dine on first-class pastries and desserts made from scratch each day. She was really good at her job, and actually helped me improve in the bakery. But I was so mad her job even existed, simply to provide pastries to people who just sat around and decided how the school's money was spent. I obviously didn't make a stink about it to anyone, because she was my friend, and I wouldn't ever dream of putting her employment at risk, but I couldn't help feeling like her entire career was to make fat cats fatter, and it just boiled my blood. Story 13. Ooh, yes, I'm prepared for this answer. My school's mascot was a knight, and it was rumored that the school had the choice of installing a pool at the high school, or to commission a large, think like 25 ft long, metal sculpture of a knight on a horse, and to hang it from the ceiling in the back hallway. They opted for the horse. I was waiting for Kanoa to pop up on here. Seeing that stupid pile of scrap shoved into the rafters like an afterthought is something I won't miss. That place was fucked, and I'm just happy I never have to go back. Especially if Smith is still the VP, fuck that guy. Story 14. $30,000 from 2 years of fundraising on an LED billboard about 10 feet off of a major road. It was so bright that it caused several accidents at night and had to be shut down about 8 months later because it was deemed a safety hazard. I hung out with several guys on the programming team, and they figured out how to upload memes onto it. They couldn't figure out who did it, so no one got in trouble.